Maureen is back and we're going to talk about habits. Let's begin.
This is Debt Free in 30. Here's your host, Doug Hoyes.
Maureen, welcome back. How are you doing today?
I'm doing well, thank you. Yourself?
Excellent. I am also well. So you called me up a while ago and you said you wanted to do a podcast on habits. And I said, yes. You want to talk about nuns? And you said, oh, that's a stupid joke. And so I said, okay, fine, we'll do it your way. So now I have no idea what you want to talk about. You've sent me some questions to ask you. So I haven't done any show prep because I'm lazy. So I've just got the questions you've sent me. So we're gonna wing it here. The first obvious question though is, what is a habit? So start with your definition, and then I'm going to ask you why we're even doing this show and why we care. So let's start with how do you define what a habit is?
Okay, a habit is a behavior or action that we do repeatedly, regularly, with little to no conscious thought.
Okay, so that kind of makes sense. And can you give me an example of a habit, like off the top of your head? It doesn't have to be finance related.
Yeah, I'll do one from ages ago because it was so disturbing when I realized. So at university, I worked and then I'd walk home, right? So there was a couple of days where when I got home, I realized I had no recollection of getting home, which meant my walk was such a routine and such a habit. I could do it without conscious thought, without worrying about stopping at the lights and going through. So if you've ever had that experience of, oh, wait, how did I do this? And just because it becomes so habitual. I
have exactly that experience. And this happened, I don't know, it was like 30 years ago or whatever. But I was living in a place not far from where my parents lived, which is where I grew up. And I had, graduated from university at this point. I had a job and everything. And one day driving home from work, I drove into my parents' house, like into the driveway. I didn't drive into their house.
Right. Okay, good.
And I drive in and going, wait a minute, I haven't lived here for, 5 years or something. But you're right, the mind goes on autopilot because I'd lived there for many years. So maybe that's not a sign of a habit. Maybe that's a sign of insanity. I'm not sure.
No, because a habit is like, it's a cue, a routine, and a reward, right? So the cue is I'm going home, right? The routine is the route. And the reward is getting home, right? So we have neural pathways. If you think of it like water if it starts as a trickle, it'll keep trickling and then it'll dig a groove. And then the groove will become wider and the water can flow faster. And then it's just like, just flowing freely and no problems. That's kind of the neural pathway of the habit. We can dam that water and it can go a different route, like your new house. But sometimes the original stream gets unblocked and then the water flows just as quickly. So that's kind of how we can do an old habit just as easily as a new habit.
And
does that make sense?
It does make sense. We'll edit out the word "damn" later because I don't want YouTube to ban the thing.
Damn fish.
Yeah. Exactly. So how then is a habit formed? Is it as simple as it's just repetition, or is there more to it than that?
We'll keep it simple. It's just doing something repeatedly can create the habit. Yes.
And so I assume there are good habits and bad habits because that's why we're doing this show, right?
Yeah.
We want to emphasize the good habits and we want to recognize that we have a bad habit. So I guess if I'm, smoking 3 packs a day, that would be a bad habit. It's something I've done repeatedly, so it's become ingrained.
Or tapping the card or the credit card without thinking, right? So I'll let you continue.
Well, so
make sure we talked about the financial habit.
Okay, so let's talk financially then, because that's kind of what this show is all about. So I assume that a bad habit, it's bad. It can be used against us. It's not a good thing. So, explain to me about that then. How does that happen? How does it get used against us? What's the problem there?
Right. So first, I just want to backtrack a little bit and just go, the financial habits we have are based on our values, our rules, our emotions, our ethics, and they actually start developing between the age of 3 and 5, and they continue developing through adolescence. So our financial habits are beginning and pretty much formed before our adult brain has developed. So that's kind of fascinating. So it becomes very instinctual. So a lot of times we're not aware of even how we perceive money. We're just responding to what we've learned. But because habits are something we don't really think about, they can be used against us. So for example, bundling, and just to backtrack on that too, is to say, like when we spend, we typically have rules. And we've developed them sometimes without thinking, or sometimes because something happened and we're like, okay, I'm only going to take an Uber if it's, after the grocery store, if I bought a lot and it's raining, then I'll take an Uber, right? But then if you take an Uber another time, you feel guilty. So then you're like, oh, I feel bad. And you don't like that sense of guilt, right? So what stores will do is they will do things to help alleviate your guilt. So bundling is one of those examples. So I am going to put a bunch of packages to get a bunch of things together because you don't want to spend them individually because you'll feel bad. I'm going to bundle them so you feel like you're getting something for free, and then you'll feel good and buy the bundle, even though possibly you're spending as much or maybe a little bit more or a tiny bit less. But because we feel no guilt, we'll do it.
So are you talking bundling at a grocery store, or are you talking bundling when I call up Rogers or Bell and, hey, we're going to bundle together. We're going to give you, not only we're going to give you the internet, but we're also going to give you the phone and the cable and this and that and the other thing. And so because it's bundled together, I don't feel so bad about it. And what does that have to do with habits then? How I'm losing. Oh,
sorry. I blended it a bit just to kind of talk about, I think it's important to, it was kind of going back to more the rules we have that we've developed. We're not even thinking about it, right? Like that's kind of the habitual thinking about money, because a lot of us aren't aware of how we view money, where our views came from, what's influencing it. And then, so, I mean, it's not quite about habit, but I thought it was just a really interesting point to note. But I do have other ones that are more habit-based.
Yeah, and I like this whole talk about grocery stores because everybody is, mad at the grocery stores and have been for a year or two because of inflation and, food inflation in the middle of 2023 was up over 10%. So people were kind of freaked out. I assume there are lots of things grocery stores do to kind of play with our brains. Is that correct?
It is correct. So one of the examples is, having the fruit and vegetables right at the beginning of the store. Because logically, if we were thinking about it, a lot of those can be bruised easily or crushed easily, and they should be near the end, near the cash, so they're on top of our cart. However, once we feel healthy, we're more likely to spend on junk food. So if you satisfy our need to go, oh yeah, I've done my fruits and vegetables, I've done a healthy shop. Ooh, look, those chips are on sale, or yes, we can buy some ice cream or whatnot. So it makes us more willing to spend on other things that they've put further on.
I'd never thought of that, but that's absolutely true. You go into the grocery store and the first thing is the fruits and vegetables right over to the right there. And I think every grocery store I've been in, it's exactly the same. So I go, oh, look, they've got a packaged salad. I'm going to pick that up. And then from that point on, I can buy whatever junk I want because I've created the impression in my mind that I've done something right. Tell me about cereal.
Oh, right. So when you have like a category of a product like cereal, if you don't put it in alphabetical order, people will spend more time looking for things. And you look at a wider selection, and you tend to buy more because you're like, oh, I like this. Oh yeah, I also want to get that. Right. So they make us stop and look longer at things by not putting it in alphabetical order.
Gotcha. And we all know, and we'll get off grocery stores and start talking about debt in a minute, but every person you buy something from, whether it's a grocery store or Amazon or whatever, it's all a big data play. right?
Yeah.
They're collecting data on you. I mean, Amazon is obviously the best at that because literally everything is on a computer when you're buying it from them. But I assume every other retailer, every other service provider is doing exactly the same thing.
Right. Yeah. It's actually called predictive analysis. Yeah. They have a category for it now. They used to use it with psychologists. How can we get people in? That was the psychology based thing. And now they're using the data collection and data analysts. So they have actually, there's a book I was reading and it was talking about Target, and Target was actually figuring out who was pregnant before, like, just based on what they were spending. So then they started, because they're a larger store, they could actually target the coupons they sent to people. So then they were actually specifically targeting, going, hey, diapers are on sale, this and this. And then it became noticed, so they pared it down. So now when you see coupons, some of them are just the standard and some mixed in are targeted directly at you, because they'll notice, oh, hey, you're doing a lot of shopping here, but you're not buying toilet paper. So I'm going to put toilet paper in as a coupon for our store and hope that you'll buy it here as well, because they want to get you in. Yeah, so it's pretty crazy how much they know about us and how they can target.
Very interesting. And we've done some shows on that, both with the food professor and with Jeanette Martin. So I'll put links in the show notes to all of that kind of stuff. So, okay, let's get back to debt here, because this is Debt Free in 30. And we're talking about habits. Let's talk credit cards, because that is the... here in 2024, that is one of the most serious issues for our clients. If you go back a year or two, what we saw was huge growth in what we call rapid loans, things like payday loans and things like that. Whereas now we're at the stage of the economy where credit cards are the big problem. They're growing at, very high rates. And everybody has a credit card. When you look at our clients, it's like well over 90% owes money on a credit card. So it's a serious issue. It's very easy to use them. You just, tap and there you go. So tell me about, from the psychological point of view, how credit cards affect our spending and how we live our lives.
So interestingly enough, there was a research done, and hopefully we'll put links to all of the places I've looked at to get sources for the data so they can look themselves. But there was research done at a university, and they had put a silent auction up for basketball tickets. Half the, oh my God, I can't think of the word, but half of the people were told they can only bid with cash, and the other half were told that they could bid with credit cards only, right? So basically, on average, the people who could bid with a credit card bid twice as much as those who could bid with cash. So the interpretation of those results was that for money you've spent on a credit card, for every dollar, 50 cents, like you value it for 50 cents. So a dollar is valued at 50 cents when you spend it on a credit card, whereas a dollar is a dollar, or maybe even $1.50 when it's cash. So we devalue the money we're spending on the credit card, which is interesting because it's actually so much more costly. It's really probably like $2 because of the interest, right? So every dollar you're spending twice.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? Sorry, I got excited with that stat.
It makes perfect sense. And, and I can make it even simpler. We call them credit cards.
Oh, they're so positive.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, credit is a positive word. Hey, Maureen, I want to give you credit for a well job done. Let's give credit where credit is due. So credit is a positive thing. What we should call them is debt cards.
Yeah.
But if we called them debt cards, every time you used it, you go, wait a minute, I'm going into debt. So getting back to our whole theme of habits here, obviously the credit card companies have established in our minds the habit that, hey, this is a positive thing. It's a good thing. And I think that's exactly why the stat you give makes perfect sense, that it devalues what I'm spending on, because I'm getting that, dopamine rush or whatever it is. I feel positive for doing it. And you really do have to step back and say, well, wait a minute here. It really is a debit card. It really is a debt card, not a credit card. And in the old days, I don't know if you're old enough to remember this or not, but we used to use like dollar bills and $20 bills and things like that. and you'd go to the store and you had to open your wallet or your purse or something and actually take out the money and hand it over. That was, you knew it was real. Whereas now they got these things. I'm not really up on the new technology or everything, but you can just take your thing, and my son does it with his phone.
Right.
Somehow he pays for things with his phone. I don't know how that works, but he just waves it and somehow magically the money goes out. So I guess we really have devalued the experience. So that's
and it's created that convenience, right? So credit cards are convenient, buy now, pay later, tapping on your phone, so convenient. And I think it's important to recognize whenever someone who makes money off of you is making things super convenient, it's because it's better for them, right? We appreciate the convenience. We're like, oh my God, you just made our lives easier, but it comes at a cost. I'm more likely to spend. I'm going to use this product. I'm going to shop here. So,
and am I going to spend more when I see the Visa logo?
Yes. The research has shown that we are more likely to spend when we see a credit card logo. And think of it now too, it's even more convenient. They'll put the, like back in the day, if there was a credit card logo on like a catalog, people would spend more. So nowadays we don't really see catalogs, but when we're spending, we do see at the checkout, especially online, oh, hey, pay with the credit card. So, or right at the beginning, hey, we accept these credit cards. So, okay, great. We're more likely to spend.
Because that induces me. Yeah. Because when I see the Visa logo or the MasterCard or American Express or whatever it is, like, okay, this is a thing that makes me spend. So, okay. So I understand how credit cards have gotten into our brains and made us spend more and more and more. The flip side of spending and debt, of course, is savings. And I assume there's a counter to all this that, habitually savings has become more difficult as well. Tell me the story there.
Right. So although 2/3 of us are super stressed that we don't have enough savings or emergency savings or whatnot, there's a bunch of us that don't save, right? It's difficult. It doesn't give us that immediate rush that spending does. Right. So we spend, we get the thrill. When we put savings, it's just there. So some of the top reasons why we don't save or why it's difficult is we don't make enough money for some. That's just true. Spending is addictive because it triggers that pleasure center of our brain. We also, as I said already, the rewards aren't immediate when we save. We don't get that same thrill. And we only save when we think we can. So there was an interesting study that had 3 categories that they were looking at. It was a group of people who had money and they knew they had money. And there was a second group of people who did not have money, but they didn't know it. And there was a third group of people who didn't have money and they knew it. And what the research showed was that the first 2 groups actually saved. So even the people who didn't have money, but they didn't know it, were saving. So it came down to savings was actually more of a confidence thing than a reality thing for the majority of people. Obviously, there are some times where that's just not possible, but yeah, so I thought that was interesting because then you can see it too, because we do meet people who do have decent amount of money and they don't really have savings. And so is that the money script that we learned from before, right? That we are always in that sense of lack. So we're not saving because we don't think we have enough, even though we're making a decent amount of money. So it was kind of fascinating.
Yeah. And
savings is confidence.
And the stats back that up, because if you look at this household savings rate in Canada, and we've talked about this on the show before, and I understand the savings rate is not really the amount of money we put in our savings account. It's really the difference between income and spending, and there's some factors there. But prior to the pandemic in 2019, our savings rate was pretty much zero because, hey, I don't need to save. I've got a line of credit. Everything's great. And then when the pandemic hit and we couldn't spend any money on anything, our savings rate went way up. But I think it was also because I'm worried about the future. I better make sure I'm putting some money away. And then when we return to normal times, here we are in 2024, the savings rate, of course, has completely dropped. But that's interesting. Saving is a habit if you are confident. And that's kind of the key to it. But you're also right. Spending is I don't know if you want to use the word addictive, or it gives you a dopamine rush or whatever, makes you feel good. Whereas putting money into your TFSA doesn't give you that same rush. So it's not the same habit forming, doesn't form those same pathways in your brain. So, okay. So is there anything we can do to make saving addictive or give us a push, or is there's some way to create the savings habit as opposed to the spending habit?
There are for sure, and some of it's doing the tough work and just going, oh wait, no, I have to say no. That is one key piece of it. Is it won't be easy. It is work, but certainly there are things that we can do to create. So specifically for the savings account, you can do things like rename it, whatever it is that's exciting, house, right? So that when you're putting money in, it's not just savings account. You're like, oh my God, look how much money I have towards the house. So you want to make sure that you're making it an investment for you. For savings, you could do something like, okay, once I've saved $1,200, I'm going to take $300 of that and spend as a reward. So you want to have, so even though your long-term goal is to save like $30,000 for a house or something, along the way you have these mini markers, and then you create the reward system based on that. So you want to celebrate your mini successes. You can compete, right? You can say, okay, I'm going to do the 50-day week challenge. This week I'll save $1. Next week I save $2. Next week I save $3, and all the way along. And then you save like something like $1,300 by the end of the year. But it's some sort of system. So you can I think gamification is now the word. So you can do that, or create a buddy system. So that's kind of the savings aspect of it. But there are some other things that you can do to curtail the other habits.
Yeah, and I want to talk about that, but I want to, you mentioned the word system, and I totally agree with that. I guess another word for habit is system. I mean, not exactly, but it's kind of similar. So if my system is every payday, I automatically transfer $50 to my savings account, then it becomes a habit. And in fact, it's a habit I don't even have to worry about, because I can set it up on the computer, and I can even have my payroll person deposit $50 of my paycheck to this account so that it's done. So I think creating that habit is definitely very important. So, okay, continue on then with some other things we can do in terms of, good financial habits, or what else you want to tell us.
Right. So, so first thing too, good financial habits, you want to go, okay, what are those habits that I want to develop? So first, if you don't have an awareness of your financial situation, figure that out. How much debt do I have? Am I in debt? Well, then my first goal is to create a habit to get it paid off in 5 years, right? Whatever that looks like. I think 5 years is a good time frame, or earlier if possible. But you want to have a financial awareness of your situation. That's a habit you want to develop. How much is in my bank account before I spend money? Right? How much is my limit? Where am I at? Like, what's going on? Another habit is just to educate yourself on financial literacy, like listening to a podcast, doing something, talking to a financial advisor. Develop the habit of being interested in understanding financial literacy. So then you have more confidence to do what you need to do to create that system so that you're saving and building for your future. And we've already talked about the automation. So there's that piece of the financial habit. And then there's also the things that we can do to curtail some of the habits that we're being triggered on or used against us, right? So, so in the grocery store example, I mean, this one might be a bit extreme, but instead of going right to the fruits and vegetables, go and finish the rest of your list. Do the fruits and vegetables last, and then go to the checkout. Might be an interesting thing to do to see if you do spend less junk. Spend less money on junk food or treats if you've actually done your healthy stuff at the end. Or what my sister-in-law does is she does the pre-order. So she goes online and she pre-orders her groceries. So she sticks to her list. She's not getting sucked into what's on sale at the grocery store, because research shows that 50% of our decisions are made in the moment, even if we have a list. Right. So we're easily taken off balance. So that's one way.
And I think a lot of that is you got to understand your own brain. So if you're the kind of person who, you buy the salad when you walk into the store, and as a result, you're going to buy a lot of junk after it, then yes, that's something you shouldn't do. Whereas maybe you're the kind of person who goes, yeah, you know what, I can go to the far end of the store and then come back because I want to have all my peaches at the top of my cart so they don't get crushed. Okay, maybe you're good with that too. If you're the kind of person who can make a list and stick to it, that's great. I understand the problem with making a list because I wanted to buy some broccoli, and when I get to the store, the broccoli's all gross, so I don't want to buy that, and I got to. So I understand you got to be a bit flexible too. So okay, so we've got about 5 minutes left here. I want you to do practical advice, practical. So just
practical. Okay, so the other thing is practical. So you want to be now I'm like trying to rush myself. I think it's important to notice that a lot of habits are cue, routine, reward. So I'm going to give an example. So it was recently Christmas. I have 2 kids. My reward is seeing them happy at Christmas. So when I'm out shopping, I'll either forget what I bought for their stocking or something, and I'll buy. So I left my credit card at home because I don't have the habit of tapping on my phone. I have the habit of using my credit card. So I left the credit card at home, and I only took it with me when I had the Christmas list. So that curtailed my ability to see the cue of something they would like, the routine of buying it on the credit card, and the reward of seeing them having it at Christmas. I cut that out because I left the credit card at home. So you want to kind of catch your cues. What is your routine? What's the cue? And how can I curtail that? That's something that I think there's a book that I had read, The Power of Habit by Charles Duhigg, and he has great examples on how to curtail that and what to do. So I'll leave it there. I would, if you use your credit card a lot, write debt card on your credit card because it's not going to feel as good. You're curtailing that. Psychological thing, thinking that it's only 50 cents. Right? Rather than $1. $1 is $1. In fact, on a credit card, $1 is like $2. So you want to have that acknowledged. So put debt card on that. So you want to keep things realistic. If you want to keep it convenient, regular, and celebrate the small wins, as I said, and you can use a buddy system as well. Like if you have someone who's in a similar place and there's encouragement there, that you want to do that.
Yeah, and all of that is about understanding how your brain works, I think. And with your credit card example, we already talked about it, but if you can, I like that, get some tape and put the word debt on it. But the other way to do it is every time you pull it out of your wallet, you say, oh, well, I'm getting my debt card. I'm going to put this on my debt card. I'm going to use it on my debt card. You kind of drum that into you. So how long does it take to either establish a habit or break a habit? What kind of timelines are we looking at here?
Well, I mean, there's a variety of things. So honestly, I've seen from 66 days to 285. So, I mean, I really don't know. Research seems to be varied on that. But I think it's also really important to acknowledge that we're human beings so that we won't be perfect. So even if you create a new habit and you fall off, the most important thing is not to beat yourself up. Is to go, oops, and then get back and start doing the habit that you want. The more often you don't give yourself grief, you just pick yourself up and do the habit that you want to do, you will be more successful in achieving the habit that you want because you're not spending time feeling bad.
Yeah, that makes sense. And you can't establish or break a habit in 15 minutes. That's not a thing. So It might take 18 days. It might take 200. But so I agree, like after 2 days, if things haven't changed, well, keep going because it's not as simple as that. So
exactly. So just when you're breaking a bad habit, I would say track your progress, celebrate the small wins, identify your triggers, acknowledge the reason why you want to change the habit, and be mindful of what's going on. And those things will help you break out of the habit and establish the new one.
Yeah. And I never liked the word mindful because I'm a almost 60-year-old guy and we didn't talk about being mindful back when I was a kid. That seems
Pay attention.
Exactly. But the concept is exactly right. Pay attention. And I guess if you want to be woo-woo about it, well, what you got to do is go outside of your body and float up on top of the room and look down and see what's actually happening. And I guess that's what being mindful is, right? And it's like, oh, when I look at that, I see what I'm actually doing. I'm using my credit card in this way. This is how I'm shopping at the grocery store. And if I can identify, I mean, you're a big sports person, you know, you play all the different sports and everything. How does a coach do it? Well, a coach looks at what the team's doing and they're going, okay, well, you're making the pass wrong or you're doing this. We got to change it. But the coach isn't standing on the field, right? You got to step back to look at it.
Yes. You know what's funny is that in Charles Duhigg's book, The Power of Habit, he talks about Tony Dungy. And that is actually why I got super excited, because Tony Dungy, when he was asked, how are you going to bring this team to the Super Bowl? He's like, I'm going to change the routine. I'm not going to change the cue. I'm not changing the reward. I'm changing the routine. Because if I can get the routine down to milliseconds faster than the other team, then, we're become a winning team. And in both teams that he coached, the Bucks and the Colts, they were both struggling when he was hired. And he took the Colts to the Super Bowl, but he took those teams to playoffs every single year he coached them, except for 2 years with the Bucks. But he switched these struggling teams to winning teams because he was focused on changing the routine within the habit.
And then
anyways, I got all excited. That's why I got excited. I know
you're a big Tony Dungy guy, and he's been on TV for the last 20 years, making a boatload of money. So it obviously worked out very well for him. So, okay, well, that's some fantastic advice and some practical advice. So my summary of what you've said is you got to look at the big picture, understand what's a habit, what your triggers are, and then you make the conscious decision to tweak them. Are there any other final thoughts that you would like to leave the listener with on any of these topics? Just
be gentle with yourself. Like once you know, and keep it small and simple. Like don't make it complicated. Sometimes we fail in a habit because we're like, okay, I'm going to save money. And then we throw a bunch of money in savings and then we pull it out because we need it for our actual monthly life. So start small. Pick one thing. Make that change. Once that's in place, then you can look again at your life and go, okay, is there anything else I want to change? Keep it small and be gentle with yourself.
Yeah, I agree. And
hold yourself accountable.
Yeah, that's right. There's a balance there. It's incremental. So if you want to run a marathon, well, maybe you should start with a 5K and work up to it. And if it doesn't work on the first try, well, okay, you keep going. But having that end goal in mind is definitely where you want to go. So excellent. Maureen, thank you very much for being here. I didn't mention it at the top of the show, but of course you are our LIT at the Licensed Insolvency Trustee at Hoyes Michaelis in the Ottawa and Canada area. So anybody who needs to track you down and has some debt issues, obviously go to Hoyes.com. You can track her down from there. Maureen, thanks for being here. That is our show for today. There are full show notes with links to all of Maureen's sources, and there's like a dozen of them here. So all this stuff we've talked about, she's not just making it up. We've got the resources where you can read up on all of these sorts of things. So please go to the show notes on YouTube or on all of the different podcasting platforms, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, whatever you listen to. Please like, subscribe, hit the notification bell. You guys all know how to do it so that you get notification of the new podcast that comes out every Saturday morning. Maureen, thanks for being here. And
thank you for having me.
Thank you. Thanks for listening and watching. Until next week, I'm Doug Hoyes. That was Debt Free in 30.